had some really interesting speakers, and like sort of really open it up a bit more. So for people who haven't maybe had a chance to chat or want to say anything related to how they're perhaps looking at data, if there's anyone got anything they want to contribute, you don't have to have your camera on, you can talk, so you're all able to unmute yourselves. So has anyone got any questions for they've thought about for any of the previous speakers? Bob?
Hi, I just wanted to say something about the data import from iNaturalist to iRecord. Are you able to change the fields that you import?
Repeat that again, sorry Bob.
When you do the data import from iNaturalist to iRecord, are you able to change the fields that you import?
So I can have a go at that. The data is automatically imported once it reaches research grade by iRecord, so that's all set up, and it just comes through, as far as I'm aware, with the standard fields that come through. There is no earthworm project, so I don't know what happens when it's one of those projects that was brought up earlier. I don't know if any of the CEH guys can know anything more about it.
The way why I'm asking is that a lot of the questions that you raised yourself in the early part of it was to do with verification. If you were able to bring in the names of the verifiers, some of those verifiers would be internationally renowned. Another speaker mentioned it. Lecturers or scientists from the University of Berlin or the University of Turin and things like this. Then your verification process could be more effective if you know who the verifiers are and you can sort on those items.
It's fairly lengthy process, but certainly I've been looking at it. We download all the research grade records on a daily or weekly basis, depending on numbers of records that become available. And certainly it's possible to download a list of users and get the number of records that they've identified or recorded. So you can use that as a key judgment in that sense, that if they're doing a lot of verification, then they're probably quite keen. As for going through the individuals, it gets more difficult. So you can kind of do some assumptions, but you have to fiddle with the API, as it were, that you download.
What you can then do from that, if you've got those basic statistics that somebody called KM132 in Germany is verifying 40,000 salixes a year, you can then individually contact that person and almost ask them, which I've done. I've actually contacted people and asked them, can they please improve their biography, give themselves a proper name and say what their experience is, so that that person becomes a recognized, in effect, expert.
Can I come in with something here? Because I think, so first of all, the stuff that Tony's suggesting, he's not doing that in iRecord. I'm right there, Tony, aren't I? You're going into iNaturalist and pulling that information off. So as verifiers, we have no control over what data comes into iRecord from iNaturalist. It is simply records for our group, whatever that may be, that have reached research grade.
So it's the initial download criteria that need to be modified then.
Yeah, so we're not importing anything. It's all automatic. It all goes through automatically.
Giselle, do you know anything about that?
Oh, the BRC use an API to bring through. Unfortunately, Martin's not on the call today. Who deals there? So I don't know if there's anyone working with Martin who might be able to.
So the API needs to be slightly tweaked to do these type of things.
Well, they're bringing. There are certain criteria as to what they're bringing through, like they have been looking at that, the BRC, about it has to meet a certain geolocation, be on the UK species index, and they are sort of wanting to encourage about recorder names. I'm not a verifier, so I don't get to see what is being pulled through onto iRecord. But if there are issues that you're facing, then please let Martin Harvey know through the iRecord, because we do want to get that information. Because
no, I'm coming from the other side. I'm the iNaturalist user,
yeah,
who's being thrown out of our iRecord because nobody knows who I am.
right, because they don't know the names, they don't know.
So can I come in with something here that I think is quite important? With iNaturalist, my understanding that it's all about checking an image and say, and that's how people are determining whether a record is correct or not. So when you're getting agreements, it's because people are assessing an image. That may be a photo, it might be an image of a recording, as Tom showed earlier. So if you're looking at an image, you as the verifier can determine whether you can verify that record from that image or not. If you've got lots of experience and you want to make that clear, I would add that in the comments section so that it's coming through on the record that you've got this experience.
If you're dealing with thousands of records on a weekly basis, there's no way that you can put a comment field in that respect. I'm doing verification for South Hampshire, and I would hope that my records verification data set could be automatically recognized either through my email address, my username, or some other form of way where it just flags up, oh, it's a Bob record, it's safe.
See, I think, Bob, though, that's we're talking about cross-taxa here, and each recording scheme is going to have their own verification protocol. There are people that are excellent at botany that have never identified an earthworm, as an example.
Oh, of course.
I wouldn't trust my money spider records.
I wouldn't even submit a money spider record.
Well, so the point here is that without changing the whole verification system for the UK, it's always going to have to be done on a taxonomic group level in iRecord. That's how iRecord's set up. So I get the earthworm records for the whole of the UK. With butterflies, it will be done by county for that group. And that's the thing. What the butterfly recorder needs to check your record will be different from what I need. And I understand that you're maybe submitting a lot of records, but what we've got to remember is that all the verifiers, they're doing this as a volunteer as well, and they're dealing with a lot of stuff. So they have to come up with verification protocols that mean that they can deal with that data. And that does mean that some data that is potentially correct is going to get thrown out if they don't have the information that they need from the recorder. Does that make sense?
So you're still using the old school system of whereby can I trust this person?
Yeah, so that's exactly how I do it. On iRecord, there are two verification statuses that mean a record can be accepted. There's considered correct, where you can say I trust this record. So, for example, with earthworms, that would be knowing that they use the right guide, that they use the right features, that they maybe have some training and experience of identifying earthworms.
So you still need to know every one of your field observers, individually and personally.
Or they need to be able to provide that information in the record. Yeah, I mean, I'm dealing with I'm a national recorder, which means that I have a relatively small number of records coming in, whereas a county recorder for butterflies will be getting they'll be getting absolutely shed loads of stuff coming in just for their county, and they'll have a different approach. So they might only take that approach with the records that will have a higher impact on the data set, because the impact on the data set of an individual record is important as well. For rare earthworms, I'll always require a voucher specimen until we've got bigger data sets, as an example. So
clearly on a taxonomic taxon basis, some of these different taxons need to be treated separately.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what I would argue. Whereas I don't think you need this kind of scrutiny for records of a blue tip, for example. But there, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough.
It's something, yeah, that perhaps needs further discussion. Tony, did you want to add something there? Yeah. You're on mute at the moment. Tony, you're still on mute.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. But basically, I'm a generalist. I have to deal with all taxonomies. So my issue is about level of confidence in the widest sense. And we would take the view, or I would take the view that I will trust easy to identify records more than those that are difficult, and they have been rated. There is a rating of difficulty of identification. It's on iRecord, so we know that information exists about how easy it. I don't have access to the source of that, which would be useful, because then I would apply that ruling in the same sense, and I would give a level of confidence to a record based on the things I've said before. If I can pull out the names of the people and how much they do recording and what they do recording of in iNat, then I will apply a confidence level, a percentage level about how much I trust it based on its input, its difficulty of identification, and the experience of the recorder. So it's a new way of dealing with things. We're dealing with mass data from unregulated sources or even regulated sources. It's a bit unknown. If I can apply things like surveys like the ones that were done by the Back Group in Somerset recently, then I have a much higher level of confidence, and so I can start to tick these things off. And basically, as I process the data when it comes in, I'll be basically giving an idea of flagging it to say this needs more work on it, or I've gone as far as I can in justifying where it sits in the scheme of things. And this has been broadly done by the EA with their request for data from record centres, where they have asked for the type of recorder that you have, whether it's a local expert, a casual member of the public, a national expert, and so on. And I rather like that. It anonymizes the record, but it gives the source of the record a significance by the basis of I can in fact say they are a local expert in this taxonomic group, and therefore they should be trusted, and that helps everybody.
That's an interesting angle on it, that this criteria basis is important at each taxonomic group level. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I say it's early days,
and
we'll solve these problems.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has anything they want to say, add, ask, comment? Ben? On mute.
Sorry, I can't click quickly enough.
No, don't worry.
It was all fascinating, and I liked Kieran's talk in particular, because every single observation he's made has been echoed in the Conchological Society, where we look at slugs and snails, and all those things are true, but bigger. So we're getting an awful lot of records through iNaturalist now, and we can show that it's overtaking the other sources of data, and that means our recorders are spending an increasing proportion of time dealing with the data that is biased in the ways that Kieran described. And somebody said in the discussion afterwards that iNaturalist is a very fundable avenue in terms of other sources of funding, and I know exactly what. But is there any way that we can show that as verifiers that we're equally fundable? Because I very much feel like a bottleneck in terms of these records coming in. And I'm the limiting factor in the number of people who are able to record. Well, maybe not through iNaturalist, but for them to get into the recording scheme, then the recorders need to be seen as being fundable as well. And it could simply be a case of match funding in the case of applications for money to support iNaturalist project.
It's a very good point, Ben, and it's something that we should consider when we sort of look at funding, is how generally verifying communities is supported, and how is there ways of even making the data that comes through to you as easy for you to verify, and whether that's a process or resource.
Yes, it is that, but also a recognition that just because something is fundable doesn't mean it's necessarily going to improve the system which it relies upon. It might actually increase pressure upon it in some areas. That sounds a bit pessimistic, doesn't it? But the way out, I suppose, is to be realistic about it and include the verifiers in an early stage.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wants to jump in? Don't have to put your hand up if you want to say anything.
If I might,
Yes.
So a few years ago, we set up this project across the national parks using iNaturalist, and our dream on that side, which has never really come into fruition, was trying to bring all these things together a little bit. Basically, the more people who are recording at the bottom, the more energy and effort we can find to put to those biggest recorders, to put more effort to try and get more iNaturalist users to be thinking of what was going into iRecord, and eventually be training more people to be recorders, or to be verifiers, sorry, even if that be, and I know as other people have spoken about today, just looking at the easy to identify things, which can be fairly little training, or just to the point of trawling through the records to put earthworm records back to earthworm rather than common earthworm, and sort of downgrade it just to that level. But having that army of volunteers, that army of people with a bit more training who can help do that, and whether or not there's something on a national scale that we could be looking at in the maybe not short term but medium term to try and push that sort of thing a bit further forward, to and I don't know, an education program for iNaturalist users. How you would actually get to those people and make sure they read it and engaged with it is probably a whole another world, but it would be a lovely place to be.
Totally agree, and it's something we definitely want to work towards. So
Yeah, I think with that, I think educating people on how to use iNaturalist, I think we absolutely should be looking at doing that more. However, we're always going to have problems as long as the platform doesn't know its own limitations and it doesn't make that clear when people are submitting the record. Like I alluded to in my talk, some recorders will not touch iNaturalist, some verifiers, because when they have, they've had the experience of people being quite arsey with them. And I genuinely think that isn't because people are arsey. I think it's people get upset and offended when their record is rejected. It puts people off, some people off ever doing it again. Other people, like I said, get defensive. That could easily be solved by having a species difficulty system on there that said the platform won't go past it, or even if it's just warning, even if it doesn't stop them submitting, but it says this slug species requires dissection and therefore is a difficulty level 5 out of 5. That would mean that when that record is rejected, I was with Imogen doing slug dissections the other week. I know that's true, Ben. So you can pull faces, but some of them are a 5 out of 5, definitely. So yeah, I think that would just stop. It would mean that people aren't seeing an individual as attacking them. It would be the platform saying this is it, and they take it as fact. Yeah.
There is a slight problem with that though, in that it might be impossible to identify to a species in this country, but if you were in another country that only had one member of that genus, then it's not the same case. So these identification rules have to be geographically biased as well. So for something like iNat, that makes it considerably more complicated. For iRecord, it's fine, because for the majority of the time you're only talking about the British Isles. But yeah, I wouldn't envy someone doing it for the whole of the world.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a very good point, David. And as usual, I'm coming in it from a very UK perspective. I mean, for earthworms, it would actually be okay because most of the countries they have to dissect. So actually, we'd be the problem there. We'd be saying they're easier than they are in other countries. So it would still be an issue. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So it's unless we can do it at a UK level.
Yeah, but we're back again to this expertism thing where I just get much problems when I challenge the professor from Berlin when he is absolutely convinced on an identification and he cannot prove it, but it's his personal experience. He just looks at it and he knows it instantaneously. And that's sometimes something that you have to deal with at the highest level.
He could still have been wrong, of course.
Obviously, we can all be wrong.
Yeah, well, so that's exactly why for earthworms we have a verification protocol, and you simply pass or fail the criteria. So simply saying it's it because I know it and I'm an expert wouldn't be enough. You'd have to give details of the taxonomy or what guide you use.
I think they'd be able to give you that information if you ask them.
Well, yeah, they would, and then it would pass. But that's what I mean. That's why within iRecord, I'm a big fan of having a clear protocol that you can refer to.
I think what this does prompted the discussion, and there's obviously a lot more to be had about that. And it's we're running out of time, and see it's 4 o'clock. So I want to say thank you very much to our three speakers, Kieran Brown, Tom August, and Simon Rolfe. It's been really interesting, and it has promoted some interesting discussion. And there's a lot more that we could talk about here. What I'm going to do is next week I will get the recordings all uploaded onto YouTube and email everyone on the list. So you'll be able to view the recordings again at your leisure or share them with your family and friends and let people know. I will also in the email and on the website just do the sort of little updates from the steering group meeting, which isn't a lot to report. Mainly the main thing that was probably aware of is they were looking at upgrading the app, but that is taking a lot more time, resources than they thought. So they had hoped it would be ready in June, but it may not be ready till 2023 now. So it's still a lot of work to do about that. And also a drop in the email some more information and about what's going on within the National Biodiversity Network community and things that's probably worth being aware of. So thank you once again for giving up your time. Thank you for our speakers. You've been brilliant. And if you've got any thoughts, comments, whatever, please drop me a line and we'll have the chat saved and whatever. And if you've got any thoughts, comments you want to pass on to speakers, if you don't know them directly, then please drop them via ourselves and we'll pass that on. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jess. Nice to see you.
And you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.